Okay, I'm at 2387 Maple Drive doing a sanitary lateral inspection for the purchase of a home. We're looking for, any structural issues, root intrusion, bellies, stuff like that, anything that would be of concern to the buyer. And so the access point here is a PVC cleanout on the side of the house. You can see that is going towards the front. I don't know if you can see that or not. And then that is the rear going towards the garage and the alley. And right here. So if you're facing the house, it's on the right side of the house in the flower bed. And this is a sweep. The bathroom in the house is just inside this wall. This is a sweep, meaning it's kind of, I don't know if you can kind of see, it's curving and it's forcing my camera to go downstream, which would be out towards the main. The reason I mention that is just because there's a couple feet of pipe, not many, that are inside the house under the crawl space that will not be able to be inspected, but it's not much. Just want to make sure that that's clear. And this is PVC here, but originally this is probably clay, so I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually switch over into clay. But it just depends on when the sewer was installed and if it was replaced. There's a little bit of water here, it's not a concern. The lens on the camera is only about a ½ inch off the bottom of the pipe. So this is not much water, especially in a 4-inch pipe. When the lines are sitting, relatively flat, they'll hold a little tiny bit of water, but this is no concern. This is not a defect to have a little bit of water in there. Looks like we're diving. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see like the angle that the camera is sitting at, and you can see they brought this down, and then it looks like we are switching over into clay now. And that transition looked pretty good. I didn't see any buildup of any kind or anything. And so it was a nice smooth transition from the PVC to the clay. Sometimes they'll have a little bit of an offset or something there just because they have to connect. They're two separate materials, obviously, so they have to connect it with like a rubber boot. And sometimes those flex a little bit and they can offset a little bit. If you look up at the top of the monitor there, the screen, there's a little tiny bit of root intrusion. Root intrusion in clay pipe is very common just because of the nature of the pipe. They're roughly in 3 to 4 inch sections. You can see there's a little bit more there. None of this is affecting the flow line, and even if you tried to treat it, it wouldn't really do anything because there's so few, at least at these two connections here. But there are just a lot of connections when they put in clay pipe. The sections are relatively short, and so if you're going like this, you see a little bit more hanging through there, but none of these seem to be in the flow line, and they're so minor that there's really not much you could do. And again, the roots are common. When you have clay, like I was mentioning earlier, and all these different connections, a lot of times over the course of time, the packing around these joints kind of shrinks, breaks down, and allows little finger roots to get in. That's why they're very, very tiny. And there's nothing a tree loves more than to have fertilizer and water all in one place. And so the main thing to do is just make sure that it gets maintained. Meaning, you could treat it with a chemical treatment or something like that every so often. Right now, this is so minor. Everything I've found was very, very minor. And so in these instances, I like to suggest that maybe you just do another scope in 3 to 5 years, just to kind of see how quickly the roots are growing, and that'll
that'll tell you whether or not you need to worry about it or how often to maintenance them. By that I mean either have it cleaned, or like I mentioned before with the a chemical treatment, stuff called Root-X that you can put in the line, and it like foams up. It's a chemical, and it kind of burns back the roots or kills the roots that are in the pipe. It doesn't kill the tree. It just kind of prevents the roots themselves from growing further into the line and causing bigger issues. And if you do that and you keep them small, they don't cause any major issues. You don't want to let them get too out of hand. If you do, obviously things can start catching on them and causing backups, and if you let them go for too long, they can get really big and start breaking pipes. And so, as you can see, we made it all the way to the main. I'll go ahead and push it back out just so you can see that again. This is the main line, the main sewer pipe, in the probably in the street that picks up all the houses. So we've made it all the way out to the connection. And so we'll get another look at this as we pull back, but everything looks really good. Structurally, the line looked great. Didn't see any bellies. Only found a very, very minimal amount of root intrusion, which again is something you'll have to pay attention to. You know, maybe have another inspection done in a few years to kind of gauge how fast the roots are growing, if they are, and then you'll know kind of how often. A lot of times a yearly treatment with Root-X, if you've got minimal stuff, that can kind of make you feel a little better as far as making sure. But you may get an inspection done in a few years and there be no more roots than what we're finding now if there aren't trees close enough. There are a few that I see that we are in the drip edge, meaning the edge of where the branches reach out, and that usually is a good indication of about how far out the roots will go. It's about 10 feet past how wide the tree branches go out. It's a good rule of thumb to find out how far the roots will go from the tree, the base of the tree. But they can go a long way during a drought or something like that, so you never really know. But I think that was probably the worst one that we just passed on that drop right here. This was probably the most I've seen, and that was at about 44 feet, and I think that's the worst amount of roots I've seen. And even maybe if you put some Root-X down there, that foam might catch on those, but it's not worth even treating it immediately or anything. Again, it's just something you need to pay attention to. Maintaining a 100-year-old sewer is nothing if not normal. Here we are back into the PVC. So we've made it all the way back. We are out of the clean out, and I was, I'm very happy with that. The line looks really good structurally. You have the one spot. You have a couple very, very minor roots. There was one at about 44 feet that was the worst, and it was still very minor. Again, I recommend you to maybe have it inspected in a few years to kind of check root growth, unless you have some indication that there's been a lot of, if it's running slow or something else, but you could also talk to the homeowner and just kind of ask them if they have any kind of maintenance schedule that they've used in the past, or if they've had any issues with backups. Again,
mention that there's no issue there, just that you would like to know how to go forward if they have something that they've maintenance in the past. But yeah, line structurally looks great. No bellies, no offset joints. Everything looked like it's held up well over the years. And then the first half has been replaced with PVC already, so that all looked great. And so I'll just recommend a follow-up inspection in a few years to check root growth, and set up a maintenance schedule once you kind of figure out what that means as far as how fast the roots are growing, if at all. But other than that, the line looks great. So that'll end the inspection at 2387 Maple Drive. And I believe this is called Alpha, but it's basically Beavercreek, Dayton, Ohio.